Right. So like with a default swap, it's kind of like, all right, so Prime, you have an electric bill, right? Your electric bill probably changes from month to month, I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Right. So like, let's say your electric bill is basically always $90, but every now and then it's more than $100. And you have it set to auto pay, and you have it, and you have $100 in your account, right? So kind of like what the banks do with these default swaps, it's similar. It's not a one-to-one thing, but it's really complicated. And I don't want to get into like grad school level finance, right?
Sure.
Basically kind of what you do is, you know, that if your electric bill comes on auto pay and you don't have the money in your account, you're going to be right? So what you do is you go to your boy and you're like, hey, can I borrow $100? I'll give it back to you in one day. Like, I'm going to give you back this in one day. I just need $100 to make sure I have enough in my account, right? Electric bill hits, it's $95. You give him back his $100 and like $1. But let's say your electric bill hits and it's $110. Then you're like, bro, here's your $80 and I'll get you the rest plus like $20 more, you know, when I get paid on payday, right? And the idea is that like you need that money on your books when the bills come due, because if you don't, your power's getting cut off, you have late fees, you have reconnect fees, you have all of this crazy, horrible shit that happens, right? So there's already like mechanisms in the market for this type of shit. What you have is you have a risky bank that is buying a bunch of that it can't afford, putting out long-term loans, and then as the interest rates get hiked, and they didn't do anything to fix this problem. You know why they didn't do anything to fix this problem? Because none of you are black-pilled enough to realize that this entire thing is a fucking house of cards. The US dollar is too. That's why the government needs to step in to stop a depression from occurring.
You can't compete, right? And if you put all your money in first of all, a risky bank, and you don't insure the money beyond of what you have the $250,000 for, then you are also taking a risk. The whole idea is rewarding risk and punishing risk when it's realized. And for some reason, over and over and over again, with this industry in particular and a number of other ones, but this one, like the most, every time they fail, we come back in and we pay the money to help the rich people.
So I'm going to go to Aiko, but like you've on one point, I can agree with you. At least I think we can find common ground. You talked about like having a private insurance. I didn't really consider that, like a private insurance for your deposits. Okay, right. I think maybe I could say.
How did you not consider that? That's what a default swap is.
Shut the fuck up, dude. I'm talking to Lacto.
I explained it to you. Like
Holy
step by step.
Shut the All right.
Main
Both
event.
The Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank have collapsed. These banks service tech startups and cryptocurrency organizations respectively. Previously, there was government stress tests and regulations that would have applied to these banks that might have provided forewarning that there was a problem. But those regulations were lifted by the Trump administration. Why do you think these banks failed? This is an example of where government regulations could be helpful. And should the depositors be bailed out, as is currently the plan? Should our response be different than it was in the 2008 financial crisis? So yeah, this is huge, like the biggest news story by far that's happening. And it should that this bank has failed the second SVB, being the second largest bank to have failed previously. Was it Washington Mutual that was the first largest bank? No one's said
Washington
it,
Mutual, when it was absorbed by JP Morgan Chase, was the largest in 100 years. This is the second largest in 100 years.
Thank you.
Number 16 currently, but yeah.
Yeah, number 16, like overall in terms of banks. Yeah. So this failure, like people were concerned financial contagion, cascading problem across the economy. Quick action was taken, and it's interesting to see the difference in the response between what happened in 2008 and what's happening right now in real time. So I want to explore that. We've got different people here who have different ideas on like what these things should look like. So let's start with our friend Lactoid. Oh, and before that, hey, Pep, we can still hear you. Could you consider muting your mic so we can
sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Lactoid.
Yeah, so I wrote down some points here. The first thing is, and the article admits this, there's no guarantee that keeping the expansion of Dodd-Frank over institutions between 50 and 250 billion would have actually prevented what happened to those banks. COVID handout policies and the inflationary period that both happened after 2018. So we can't know what effect that would have had and whether or not they still would have gone bankrupt, especially considering the things they were invested in. Two, there was there currently, my understanding, is 9 large institutional investors that are still under the requirements of Dodd-Frank. And whenever you invest in a startup bank or smaller industries, that obviously carries more risk with more potential for upside. Even in 2018, when they were considering altering Dodd-Frank, there were Obama-appointed Democrats, prior Obama-appointed Democrats, that were saying the regulation on banks between 50 and 250 was stifling and it was unnecessary. In fact, the repeal could have led to those banks existing to the extent they are now, or I guess were now, and providing the returns that they were able to. And then I guess finally, I think this is the main point. I think bailouts are quite literally the problem. The whole point of capitalism, and the whole point with getting the upside of your capital with an investment, is the risk. That's why capitalists are supposed to make profits, right? They eat that risk, so they should get the profit that comes with that risk. When you invest in any institution, you risk that money. The fact that people expect the government to cover your losses leads to the risky behavior in the first place, right? We hear, socialism when you lose money, capitalism when you gain money. Well, no, we want capitalism when you gain or lose money. And also the FDIC currently already covers $250,000 of invested money from like working class people. Bailouts are just quite literally handouts to unsuccessful capitalists. They have no place. If you want risky behavior to stop, you make people who engage in risky behavior actually realize the financial risk and lose money.
Scott.
So, first, yes, to everything Lactoid said. I wanna. This is really gonna black pill you guys, but what you are seeing is just one of many instances that'll whisper and go away as the dollar collapses. Right, the dollar is completely and utterly fucking done. I mean, we are hundreds of trillions of dollars in debt. Now, granted, the government's only 32 trillion, in debt, but once you add in, Medicare and Medicaid and student loans and so many other things. And then you recognize that like the Saudis, very well may be, especially when we look at the Arabia-Iran deal, very well may be moving over to selling their oil in yuan. It's in free fall. But about this bank, right? The idea that the Trump regulations, or the curtailing of those in 2018 would have changed anything is literally just political cope from people that don't want to admit that we live in a fascist economy and that the banks own our fucking government. And if you think that that's crazy or outlandish, look at what's fucking happening, right? From their own 10K form, like, yes, they managed $230 billion in assets. They would have gotten additional regulations at $250 billion in assets. And so they're saying, well, those regulations would have stopped it. Yeah, they would have moved from 2.5% to 3% ratio, and then they would have had to do like additional checks that they were already doing themselves and ratios that they were way above. Okay. The fact of the matter is that the real problem is that people that go to MIT and make 4.0s go into banking and dumbasses go into regulating those bankers. Okay. Like the real money is in these individuals that have purchased our fucking government. The fact of the matter is that we consider cash equivalents the same as cash, and they were over leveraged in T-bills or treasury bonds, right? But especially in mortgage-backed securities. Oh, I don't know. Does that ring a fucking bell for anybody? 90% of the accounts that these individuals maintained were over the $250,000 threshold, right? This was an investment bank for tech and for large companies that carried with it a lot of risk because of those types. And they were hoping that Jerome Powell and the Fed would like lower interest rates again, as opposed to keep hiking them, and then they wouldn't have any fucking problems. Credit Suite hit an all-time high today on their default swaps, an all-time high, almost double what it was in 2009 on credit default swaps. Like, what you are watching is a collapse. And what is going to happen is exactly what did happen. Biden comes out and gives a 4-minute and 28-second speech, and he walks off the stage like an old man going to the bathroom at fucking Denny's instead of actually maintaining some fucking control and figuring out what's going on. And what they're going to do is we're not going to bail them out this time. See, we didn't bail them out. We just bailed out all of the people that invested. Oh, we're probably not going to investigate anybody for fraud, despite the fact that the CEO sold $3.6 million in shares in mid-February. He's going to walk away rich. Everyone's getting what they want, except for the fact that the fucking bank term funding program created by the Fed means money printer go burr, and it means more inflation. And everyone's going to pretend like, oh, we didn't bail them out. It wasn't a tax bailout. Everything's fine. And you're going to wonder why eggs are $30 a fucking carton. I have so much more to say about this. I'm like, this shit infuriates me.
I bet you do. I was hoping you did. Gambit.
Yeah, this topic is a lot. It's gonna be good. Not only did the CEO sell lots of shares, but there were other controlling members too who sold and made a lot of money recently. I'm indifferent on this topic. So I don't like the idea of bailouts. And the way that they're getting by the term bailout is they're saying that they're using funds that were already allocated in an emergency budget to deal with these type of situations. And in the day is taxpayer dollars, so it's still a bailout to me. But that's the technical hurdles that they're going through to not call it a bailout. But one part of it that's a bit uneasy to me is that I don't think, when I've looked into certain things, and I could be horribly wrong about this, and definitely any of y'all correct me on this, but I don't think there's anything particular about this bank that was horribly different than how other banks could be. And when y'all talk about the Trump policy, I'm not sure if that's the unrealized losses portion of not having to report, or if that's something else. I didn't look up to see what exact specific portion was related to Trump, but basically they had unrealized losses, which they don't have to report until they become realized, which that didn't happen until they had to sell positions in order to cover the withdrawals. But the problem is, I think any bank could deal with this, right? If a lot of people start to withdraw for whatever reason, I think the likelihood that you're going to be able to cover and sell positions as interest rates are rising is incredibly low. So I don't know if there are particularly bad things, like them not rehiring a chief risk officer. There's a lot of things that are definitely fishy. Them selling the stock is also one. But I don't know if there are specifically hardcore, like lunacy or malicious things that were happening that make this different. And that's the part of where maybe protecting the interests of the depositors might be okay. But I'm willing to be swayed on this, but yeah, I want to hear more of y'all thoughts on it too, and we'll talk more. No.
Yeah. There's a lot of we need to talk about there. Let's go to Aiko.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of fact checking on this panel, just because this is an area that we probably all have some gaps in our knowledge on. But a couple of things I just wanted to address, just from what I've heard so far. One is Gambit. It doesn't come from prepaid tax dollars either. It comes from premiums that are paid by the banks themselves. So banks and savings and loans pay a premium. It's an insurance premium. The FDIC is literally insurance. And,
wait, we're not talking about FDIC. No, the FDIC and the $250K that they get back, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the above that.
No. I know. I listened to the same press conference you did. What Biden was announcing was that FDIC. Okay. FDIC is what's paying for this, so it's not a tax. It's not coming from general federal revenues. It's not coming from Congress. It's not coming from tax dollars. It's coming from the FDIC deposits, which are the premiums that were paid for. In fact, SVB is not largely covered. This is something I heard from Lactoid. It's actually not FDIC covered, so it's not about the 250,000. 97% of SVB is not FDIC insured, so they had to make an exception and cover all this stuff.
We're talking open. I'm sorry. I don't mean
okay. And the last thing, the last thing I want to address on that is that I think it was Lactoid that said that it's a bailout for the investors, but it's not. That's investors are not being bailed out. The only ones people who are being bailed out are the depositors. So like people who like did business at that bank and deposited money at that bank, they'll be taken care of. But the investors in the bank themselves are going to be left to hang. And when Biden at his press conference, when he was justifying that today, he said, "Hey, that's how capitalism works. You take a risk, and now you're gonna lose your shirt because you took the wrong kind of risk. We're not going to bail those people out. We're just going to bail out the depositors, and we're just trying to stop the contagion like from spreading to other banks."
I'm looking at Scott ready to fucking explode. Don't worry, Lactoid, I see you.
Yeah, too. I want to respond to that.
It's opening statements.
Yeah.
I'm fucking livid. I'm being quiet.
Yeah. Oh, this is gonna be an explosive panel, I'm sure. Let's go to our friend DB.
I think I actually mostly agree with Lactoid on this.
Oh fuck! All right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not.
Sorry, you cut off.
No, I don't have anything else to add. I think they.
Okay. All right.
I'm just right. There you go.
Let's go to our friend Pep then.
You're muted.
Oh, she's still muted.
Quiet.
Thank you. I don't usually use push to talk, so I'll probably forget more. I thought I was going to be more on the side of the removed regulations being the cause of this, but the more I looked into it, the more I feel like I still think it's really shit that those were removed, but I also don't think that they would have. I think they could have. They maybe would have like added some small percentage chance of avoiding this, but I don't think that it would have really. I don't think it would have for sure guaranteed that this wouldn't happen. I think that the interest rates going up as rapidly as they did when they had a bunch of 10-year loans in there was like, it's just killer for, basically that. I think they fucked up, but I don't know that they necessarily fucked up because of something that would be changed by the regulations.
I'll put in my 2 cents here and then jump in. I think, I've been swayed to think that these particular regulations that people were talking about, they may not have saved this particular. What?
I ask you to just clarify which regulation we're talking about. Are we talking about not having to report unrealized losses or something?
No, the ones that Trump got rid of. It was like in 2018, I believe.
We're talking about moving the designation for Category 3 banks from $50 billion in managed assets to $250 billion.
Yeah, so SVB wouldn't be covered. So I don't know. It's not clear. I don't think anyone knows exactly whether that would have helped or not. So I can't say for sure. I think that what this shows that though, and this is where we'll have our disagreement, is that more oversight was actually needed. That the government should have had more insight into their books. That we should have understood, because SVB was a to answer your question, Gambit, from previously, SVB is a derivation is not the word I'm looking for, but like it's not the same as all the other banks. Like in terms of it's loan to deposits, right? It was extremely unhealthy, but it was just kind of allowed to be that way. Why not? Why wasn't it on the troubled banks list, right? It should have been there, clearly, right? But it wasn't. I think we should have had more oversight. I think that Dodd-Frank wasn't enough to start with, and then Dodd-Frank was weakened by Trump, and then by Frank himself. Barney Frank apparently was on the board of Signature Bank, the other bank that fell, and was lobbying to weaken his own legislation. It's incredible. It's wonderful, right? So I think that I don't want to get bogged down too much in specific regulation, right? But just overall, like the concept of like managing these banks, which are critical infrastructure, and like what does that mean, and is it actually necessary? So go ahead.
Can I respond to? I want to respond to Aiko, and then actually my response will also be a response to that, Ryan. If I didn't use my terms correctly, I apologize. It could be entirely my fault. When I look at so banks make they can make money off two ways, right? You can invest in the shares of the bank, right? But you could also, when you deposit money into a bank, there's certain cash holding requirements they have, but most of that they're going to take and they're going to invest it to try to make more money.
Exactly.
Now, the FDIC has insurance up to federal insurance up to $250,000. Any money you put in after that, in my mind, is a investment in the bank, right? It is a unprotected investment. You are putting money in, and that bank is like, you are trusting that bank is going to go use it efficiently and provide you rates. When you go into banks with a whole fuck ton of money, they don't just the clerk doesn't just make you an account. Like, they go sit you down with other people because they realize, well, this person's going to make a substantial deposit. We want that money. We can make a deal with this guy. We can give different investment vehicles, different like options and different accounts that they have. There's all of that plays here. So when I'm saying investment, I'm saying even people who make deposits, I would consider to be investors in that sense.
Yeah, I understood that too. That's what I was going to say.
Exactly. And this is, I guess, to your point, Prime, this was a venture capital bank. Venture firms are known, like they are supposed to be volatile. They are like, this was a tech-oriented like investment bank. It is aimed at trying to, help tech startups. Tech startups, the most solid of blue chip stocks, as we all are aware. And it's putting a whole fuck ton of money on this. And once the tech industry suffers, yes, when you invest in a bank that deals with a risky industry, sure, you might get a fuck ton of gain if it goes well. But if it doesn't go well, you might lose your investment. And people who have over $250,000 invested, they are like wealthy people. These are rich people who have over $250,000 invested in this bank. These are capitalists.
No. Tech startups are risky investments, right? But like your deposits should not be risky investments.
Over 250, they are.
Well, I mean, first of all, like, I'm glad that you're for government regulations, right? That we should have the FDIC in the first place.
I never said that.
Hold on. Okay, so is that a good thing or a bad thing that those things they were insured?
He's saying that.
No. You can say it. Like,
right. So I am against the FDIC. I am against like federally mandating that banks insure this money, or the feds insure the money. That being said, like, given the reality that we live in, where it is the case, like, the people who stand to lose money are the rich capitalists, right? Now, if we didn't have FDIC, it would be the rich capitalists and the poor working class who put money into this risky venture capital bank. I think they deserve to lose their money too, honestly, but they're not going to.
So and this is where I disagree. I feel like that the depositors, well, one, I think some of the depositors are stupid. Roku apparently had $475 million in one checking account. Did you hear that? Like,
they deserve to go under if they're that stupid.
I hear that
as well.
Stupid capitalists should fail, right? That ensures a smart economy.
They should have diversified where they put their money, right? I agree with you on all that, right? But like, I don't want the average rank and file worker at a venture capitalist who doesn't even fucking know where the money is located, right? Like, who had no part in this, right? To be out of a job. Like, I don't think, like, if we're gonna have government intervention, right, and we will have government intervention. Particular reality, right? Like you said, if we're gonna have government intervention, it should be to protect those types of jobs. That's actually should be the fucking point. Is to make sure those people.
When you say job, can you qualify?
I think he meant money. Right?
Yeah, I think he meant money, but you keep saying job.
No. I'm saying jobs. No. So because if these depositors, right, let's say they lost all their money, just pretend, right? They lost all their money. Well, then a lot of these businesses would go out of business, and then people lost their jobs. So I want to protect the jobs.
Companies shouldn't be allowed to fail, is what you're saying? Now?
Yeah.
You're expanding further.
That is what you're saying, kind of.
No. Again, I said it in the beginning. Tech startups are volatile, and that's the way that should be, right? Like, it's a startup, that is. But like, this isn't a startup, right? This isn't the fall of the startups. This is a bank, right? This is a bank that has failed, right? Like the fault here isn't on the tech startup, and like You understand?
No, hold on.
It's hard to say that it's not.
I think this is where you lose us, because it is the fault of the bank, right? Because when you're investing in a risky asset, in the same way, look, if I put all my money in a risky tech startup and lost all my money, you guys would say, well, you still gain a whole bunch if it did well, but you lose, right? You lose when you lose. If a bank does it, why don't we have that exact same mentality towards them?
No, the bank. No, I am not a defender of the banks, right? Like, I think they should be investigated for fraud. I think that people should go to jail. We should make a fucking example of these people. And you know what? We should go back to the 2008 financial crisis and get those people too, right? I've said that many times. So let's be very clear. I'm not a defender of the fucking bank, right?
I'm not saying you are.
But he's talking about just saying the venture capitalists that they're defending.
They're just depositors. They're just depositors.
One last point, and then I'll let somebody else go. So, and this is going to go towards, I guess, the FDIC point as well. The FDIC, what it is federal insurance. Now, there is an insurance industry, right? Your home. If you lose your house, there is a private company that will reimburse you for the house. Same thing with your car, right? There are insurance companies are literally set up to deal with catastrophe. That's why insurance exists in the first place. I don't understand why you couldn't have a bank say, look, we have an insurance company. We are insured up to this amount for your investments. Come invest with us. That's why I'm against FDIC. That's why first I'm against FDIC. But in this case, what the depositors were told is you get up to 250 because that's what FDIC is. Why are we protecting them more than that when the depositors knowingly as adults risked their money in a bank aimed at tech startups?
I can give you that much, right? And then we'll go to Scott, right? Like, I can give you that much, and that we should follow literally just basic FDIC practices, because there's two way the FDIC protects, right? One is to up to $250,000, right? Like as we've said, but also the second way, and I looked this up. They took me 2 seconds of googling to find out. On the FDIC website, what they do is, and when a bank fails, they liquidate the bank. Completely. That's and then they sell its assets. Yeah. And then they use that to cover the losses. So in this case,
so they're going to need more money then.
No. So what I've heard, and I don't know this part. I don't know for sure. Was that if they had done it, and in fact they're still doing it right now. The auction for the bank is happening right this second. If they had done so, then most depositors will get 90% of their money. So not all of it. So there would be a haircut, right? So I would agree though that we should have gone through the normal process.
No, that is happening. Right? To be clear, we are going through that process.
We aren't going through the normal process. We're going through the process.
So why cover all the deposits if the wealthy people are going to get 90% of their deposit back?
We are liquidating the bank, but we're going to cover 100%. And it's it's a different process that they're doing.
No. Hold on, wait. All I'm saying is that the process that you laid out, Prime, is being followed.
They are liquidating.
After that is where they're going to cover more of the losses from the depositors. But they are going through the process of liquidating the bank, selling the assets to reimburse as many people as possible. Then from there to whatever the amount the depositors are losing is what I don't want to say legislation, but policy is going to protect.
Okay, so first of all, there already is a market for protecting your books, right? It's called a default swap, credit default swap, right? That's already a thing. These people were over leveraged in risk and made bad bets, and that's why they need to fail, right? So with a default swap, it's kind of all right. So Prime, you have an electric bill, right? And your electric bill probably changes from month to month, I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Right. So let's say your electric bill is basically always $90, but every now and then it's more than $100. And you have it set to auto pay, and you have $100 in your account, right? So kind of what the banks do with these default swaps, it's similar. It's not a one-to-one thing, but it's really complicated. And I don't want to get into grad school level fucking finance, right?
Sure.
Basically kind of what you do is that if your electric bill comes on auto pay and you don't have the money in your account, you're going to be fucked, right? So what you do is you go to your boy and you're like, hey, can I borrow $100? I'll give it back to you in one day. I'm going to give you back this in one day. I just need $100 to make sure I have enough in my account, right? Electric bill hits, it's $95. You give him back his $100 and $1. But let's say your electric bill hits and it's 110. Then you're like, bro, here's your $80 and I'll get you the rest plus like $20 more, you know, when I get paid on payday, right? And the idea is that like you need that money on your books when the bills come due, because if you don't, your power's getting cut off, you have late fees, you have reconnect fees, you have all of this crazy, horrible shit that happens, right? So there's already like mechanisms in the market for this type of shit. What you have is you have a risky bank that is buying a bunch of bullshit that it can't afford, putting out long-term loans, and then as the interest rates get hiked, they're fucked, and they didn't do anything to fix this problem. You know why they didn't do anything to fix this problem? Because none of you are black-pilled enough to realize that this entire thing is a fucking house of cards. The US dollar is too. That's why the government needs to step in to stop a depression from occurring. One of the guys that's an executive board at SVB, oh, he just happened to be the chief financial officer of Lehman Brothers when it collapsed. Oh, the CEO of SVB also happens to be on the board until Friday of San Francisco Federal Reserve. Like this is a game, and you guys are like, oh, well, you know, the right regulations and the government. You guys don't understand that the people that write these regulations cannot fucking compete with these people. It is the smartest creme de la creme of individuals that go into finance and banking. That's why we have people that are math geniuses become fucking quants, and they sit in New Jersey with landline internet at the New York Stock Exchange writing fucking algorithms that come in to make more money before you can even physically buy shit. It's nepotism. You can't even do certain trades unless you're managing like $30 billion. Like the whole fucking system is rigged. And when you say, well, we need to step in because of the fraud that was occurring, and we need to insure these people that invested in that. No, you need to hit all of the people that engaged in fraud and get them to try and cover some of the assets. And if you lose some of your money, tough fucking luck, because money does not disappear when a bank collapses. What money does is it goes to places where people invested more properly. That's the market at work. But when you step in to protect the US dollar and to protect runs on the banks, because we have this bullshit fractional reserve banking system that is destroying wealth and keeps the poor poor, when you step in to fix that, what you actually do is you go to the corrupt people that are smarter than the regulators and you say, you're too big to fail, and what you can do is commit fraud, walk away with millions after Lehman Brothers, and then do it again on SVB, and we'll protect the economy and we'll protect people, which just means people do dumber fucking shit with money. Like you're causing more collapses and more problems and limiting the market's ability to actually self-correct.
No. Oh, Jish, if you want to go first before I respond to
that. I disagree with a lot of this, that it's somehow, I mean, maybe you want to just call banking in general nefarious. I won't really engage with that. But the idea of the bank taking their deposits and some of their investments on top of that and trying to, you know, do mortgage-backed securities or whatever to get a certain percentage on top so that the bank grows. These things are regular banking practices. And I understand your thing about default swaps, but the thing is if they have to sell off assets to cover while interest rates are historically rising, which is kind of unable to account for, I agree with you that people are going to fail and banks are going to fail. I don't think anything about that is nefarious, though. Like the real crux of this is, if there isn't a panic, this bank doesn't fail, right? The reason why this bank failed is totally because a lot of people went there and said, hey, I want my deposit back. And there's no way to cover that. And given the amount of time they had to cover it with the unrealized losses that they had on the book. So anyone in this situation would fail. And you can say that maybe there are different banks set up with different ideologies so that they aren't in this same risk class. But all of the banks in this risk class would fall victim to this that happened at SVB. And that's why it's hard for me to like choose a hard stance.
You're talking about Signature Bank, right?
Yeah. Well,
no,
I'm not sure
SVB.
what that term specifically means. I'm talking about SVB.
Signature Bank is the one that failed because of the $10 billion like pullout and withdrawals because of essentially contagion, right? This is what happens when a bank fails. People invest in like Bitcoin and commodities and shit.
No, but this is specifically what happened with SVB too, right? So they had like $15 billion in unrealized losses. That got reported in a press conference, but it also was reported, I think, in their earnings report as like a comment or something. And then people started to ask questions about that. And then that's when people started to say, hey, maybe you should take your money out. And then that started the social contagion.
And then $42 billion left at like $170 billion bank.
This doesn't make sense. Like, we're pretending like the Fed is like a magician, right? That just came in and waved a magic wand of unpredictability to say like interest rates are going up now. Like anybody with half a fucking brain that works in finance can look at the COVID lockdowns, right? And can go,
and know that inflation.
And we can look at quantitative easing from like 2009. They can look at the fact that the Fed needs to do quantitative tightening, right? They can look at the fact that like QE isn't even like a thing. They can look at the M1 money supply, and they can know that unless we want hyperinflation, obviously the fucking Fed was going to need to increase interest rates. It's the improper allocation of resources that caused them to make dumb financial risks in their practices and what they purchased instead of having more cash assets to be able to deal with.
I want to make sure you understand where I'm disagreeing with you, because I think in most of the things you just said, I absolutely agree. What I'm saying that is in the institution of banking where SVB and their like peers live, rapidly rising interest rates along with a social contagion will tank any of them. So I agree with your point that we have to understand that this is a house of cards, and I'm trying to like reinforce that. But given that, it's hard for me to call this like maliciousness. I think this is just how this tier of banks operate. And if there's ever a social contagion on top of a pandemic that's going to cause inflation due to whatever circumstances, all banks that belong in that demographic will fail.
Let me ask you a question.
Hold on, wait. But in any other scenario, that unrealized losses wouldn't cause a social contagion that causes a massive amount of withdrawals that causes the bank to fail. So that's what I'm saying. Like in a typical day, this doesn't happen. But go ahead.
Let me ask you a question, right? Let's say you're a restaurant owner, right? And you have two locations that you can build a restaurant, right? One's in a nice neighborhood and one's in a neighborhood with a really, really bad crime rate, right? What you're saying is if you were going to build a restaurant, right, let's say in a really, really bad neighborhood, do you think you might preemptively recognize that you're in a bad neighborhood and that you would get insurance and you would make sure that like if something happened at your restaurant that like you had the funds to be able to deal with that situation?
For sure.
Well, now recognize that people that are involved in banking and involved in a business that is full of fucking fraud, and they had plenty of evidence to recognize all of the fucking problems, have plenty of evidence to recognize that all of the things that caused the 2009 financial collapse, with the exception of like a current bubble, like the same practices are being done again under different names. They're just called tranches now. Right? If you're in that fucking business, it behooves you to recognize that that's a potential risk.
Yeah, I don't think the way that mortgage-backed securities are happening now and in 2008 are the same. But I don't want to go into that. But what I will say is, if you're if you do want to build your business and you come to find out that all the neighborhoods all the places in those good neighborhoods are taken, you might then build your business in this less than optimal neighborhood, but solely due to that being the nature of like what's happening, not due to your own.
That's why
like,
you don't. That's why you don't buy
so
like
$40
billion in fucking 1% T-bills. Like it's insane.
All I'm saying is that there are different type of banks to support different types of scenarios. So it's unrealistic to say all banks should operate as Bank X. Like that's not realistic.
Nobody's
They're all
saying
going to
that.
have certain markets that they're going to try to capture and go after. Now, in that, I kind of agree with a lot of what you and Lector have said. If people fail, let them fail. I'm just, when you get into the nefarious talk, I don't know how much of this is actually nefarious. And I would think that we should suggest that things aren't nefarious until we can find reasons to believe that. Now, pointing out that the CEO, I think the CFO and another
32%, the CEO
sold a ton of those type of things are like corroborating evidence that there might be malintended play, and they were previously a part of certain endeavors as well. But just demonizing the practice of like banking and stuff gets a little bit weird. But yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you're equipped. Anybody here is like equipped to talk about it, but like just the system of fractional reserve, which we don't even have anymore, is nefarious in and of itself. Like the entire economic system since 1913 is a fucking problem.
So I think part of the issue here, and this is the difference between myself, Scott, Lactoid, Doobie, if you agree with Lactoid, then is that like I think the purpose of the government is to serve the people, is to protect ordinary citizens from the ravages of, well, fucking whatever. And this is one of those things. So I am on the side of depositors. I think that depositors can do stupid things and still we deserve to be protected, right? Now, in this case especially, like maybe like not everything, right? Not everything they put in maybe should be protected, right? Maybe Roku for putting like almost $500 million into a single checking account, right? Maybe they take a haircut on that. Whatever, right? Like that's.
I want to ask you a question.
It's hold on, and you can ask me.
Yeah.
Sure. But like the purpose is to protect people, in my opinion. And so when these depositors have businesses, right, where all these people's job livelihoods are tied to them, well, yeah, I want to make sure that these people get their money. So that they can keep those jobs running, right? And then they can keep creating economic activity. Just as I believe in the 2008 financial crisis that depositors and like the people who were the ordinary people who took out mortgages, right? They should have been protected. That they should have gotten the government largesse rather than the investor. That was the purpose of the government. And we failed them miserably now. Now, like, this isn't the same group of people. Sure, I get it, right?
One of them technically is Joseph Gentile.
Yeah, I don't, and I don't necessarily like these individuals, right? But still, in principle, like, if we're protecting the people, being people's jobs, right? Then, like, I don't think the moral hazard lands on them. The moral hazard bank itself. The bank is where we drop the ball here, and the bank should suffer, and the investors there should, and the CEOs in the C-suite should be investigated, especially after their sell-off of their stock, right? Like a few weeks before all this happened. That should definitely be the case. But I'm not. But when we're talking about depositors, that's a different thing. And also, to be clear, I want again, because it's a different ideology. We should have fucking public banks. Public banks that don't have all these weaknesses, that aren't subject. Well, I shouldn't say
but
subject.
They got to invest in something.
Sorry.
Regardless of it being a public or a private bank, they're going to have to do some sort of investment vehicle with the money that they receive.
I agree. I would have a safer investment in that being a public bank.
They could invest in the government.
That's the problem. The problem is that we don't have fucking private banks. The problem is that we do have banks that are too big to fail. The problem is that large portions of it are fucking insured. The problem is that we have massive regulations on the banks instead of allowing fucking, and then when a bank, massive regulations written by the people that work in the industry themselves that pull one over the wolves on the eyes of stupid fucking politicians. If you're a left winger, right, and you think, just imagine people like Trump and Republicans being able to control what people with perfect fucking GPAs at MIT are doing in finance. And if you're a right winger, just imagine the squad being able to figure out what is or isn't or shouldn't be done in terms of finance regulation. None of these people are in any way, shape, or form equipped to deal with it. They take their they give out their fucking talking points, like Bernie Sanders screaming about the 2018 bill, but doesn't have a goddamn thing to say about it during the entire fucking Biden presidency so far. Like, it is a rigged fucking game, and it already is a public game. And what you're saying is we need less. We need these people gambled money in a small investment. Well, not small, but in investments that didn't pan out, right? If someone committed fraud, right, then that fraud needs to be exposed, and those people that committed fraud need to be what goes towards the individuals that made that poor investment.
First of all, I don't like this like jerking off of like the financial industry. All this is the smartest people, and we just can't understand what happens in that realm. Well, one, we can some of those investments, those like risky investment vehicles were created specifically to be inscrutable, right? We could say, hey, you don't do those risky investments, right? Like that's not a thing that we allow. Maybe do something that isn't so prone to a contagious collapse, right? We could do something like that. But beyond that, right?
We like, literally can't.
When we're talking about
you're like waving a wand at something you don't.
We're
understand.
talking about politicians, right? Like, yes, obviously, most of Congress is not going to have the knowledge to regulate the banks. We get that, which is why we have regulators, right, to do such a thing. Now, I understand the realities of the American system, and that we have the revolving door there that like these regulators are so often captured by the industries they're supposed to have oversight, and I would have a whole list of reforms to try to take care of that. But since that's a separate conversation, right? I'm trying to design a world where, one, we've already taken care of that, but also we have a government whose purpose and whose actions are to take care of the most vulnerable, right? And that will be depositors in this case. But that would be employees in this situation. So yeah, go ahead.
They Gambit.
I hate
Gambit,
some of this
and then
talk.
Lactoid.
I really hate to talk about regulators versus private industry versus the like switching that happens. I really, really hate it. Like,
me too,
to
buddy.
Become a person.
I hate the economic fascism as well.
No, that's not what I hate about it. To become a person that can understand how to regulate banks, you need to have some level of like intellect in that domain. So the idea that somebody is gonna get really, really good in some role in banking and potentially become a legislator because of our regulator, because our legislator, because of the knowledge that they've obtained within that position is high. Those are the people that you would want to hire as regulators, are the people who perform the best and made it to the tops of their industry. And I hear the same thing in technology and every other place. Like, the people who perform the best hopefully will transition into regulatory or legislative roles. And it will be that the guy who's the CEO of SVB, hopefully not SVB, but I'm just using this for an example, becomes some regulator because he was profound in the industry. This is understands
fantastical, magical thinking. This is magical thinking. You have an industry. You have an industry. No. This is so silly.
I want you to answer a question. I'm letting you interrupt me. I'm letting you interrupt me, but I'm just wanting you to answer a question if you're going to interrupt me. Who is best to regulate an industry than the people that perform the best and consistently are at the top of said industry? You're not going to get a joke.
No, this is magical thinking. This is magical thinking. What you were talking about.
Don't give me an ANCAP story. Answer my question.
I will give you a fucking ANCAP story because it's the right ideology, and all the rest of you that aren't ANCAPs are fucking stupid and wrong. But anyways, moving on, like, what you were talking about is magical thinking. You're talking about an industry that requires massive amounts of intellect, right? And requires you to want to look at regulations and laws and numbers and computer science and all of these different fields, right? For the sole purpose of making money. It's not like being a teacher where people get into teaching because there's like some human benefit to it, right? Like where there's like, oh, I became a teacher, like I took a pay cut, but I really like working with kids. There's an incredibly rare autistic person that really likes working in finance for the passion of finance, right? It is the top performing intellectual people that understand this shit, and the incentives for massive amounts of money all go to the industry. right? The regulators are not equipped unless you give them salaries of like 1.5 million a year or something, unless the taxpayers are now going to like hawk up to make their salary competitive with the market that they're regulating, which I don't think, I don't know how many people are going to be excited about that. But no, like this hope that, like, sure, every now and then you're going to get somebody that has a change of heart that goes into regulating, that is going to investigate in the FBI, white collar crime, or is going to be a regulator, that is looking at the relationships between the credit rating agencies and hedge funds, et cetera, et cetera. But like, overwhelmingly, these businesses have way more money and they have way more talent. And on top of that, we have a Federal Reserve where individuals are like, we have a pseudo public private partnership, also known as fascism, right? Where the people are, where like they're not even really working. The agency that's regulating them are the same fucking employees that are owning the fucking banks.
I understand the problems with all of that, but I don't think you answered my question. Like, I understand that it's a complicated question, but
it's not a complicated question. It's an irrelevant and silly one.
Hold on. I just want you to answer my question, and you can use your ANCAP.
People with knowledge would be better at regulating than people without knowledge.
So you agree with everything that I said?
No.
Okay, cool. No, if you agree with me, that's fine. Perfect.
No, literally, I don't.
Lactoid. But I'll say this just before. I would definitely pay $1.4 million salaries to regulators. If that was like the magic bullet that would solve the problem, like it would be a steal versus like the damage that our financial industry does. If we could properly regulate them by just paying people more, if that was just the thing to do, I would absolutely do it any fucking day.
You were advocating for more damage. You're not advocating for less.
Lactoid.
So I'm going to skip the conversation about the black pill. Everything's captured. We need public banks and ensuring government or investing in public industries. Kind of coming back to like this situation. You said the reason why you wanted a public bank was, we want a bank for the people. My question for you again is, like, are you talking about people with over $250,000 in the bank, like, and all the investments over that?
The people and their yachts.
Right. We are like the people who stand, like the depositors who stand to lose anything here are people with more than $250,000 in the bank. We're talking about like the wealthiest Americans.
Sure. Like I'd maybe be willing to like
Oh no.
No.
We're not lowering the FDIC amount. We should.
No. I'm not doing that. Oh no. I'd maybe willing to have a conversation about individuals who had that amount of money at the bank, maybe, right? But what I'm talking about, what I understand is the businesses. Businesses have their monies there, and I think that businesses should be more insured, right? Because of course they're going to have more money in the bank, so there should be more insured for the business. They're dealing in high value transactions, so yeah, like if we could protect those jobs, right? If it's still if this like resulted in like steel plants like going out of business, right? Like you could say, well, yeah, I guess they put their money in the bank or they didn't properly diversify. You could say that, sure. And I guess for those individual capitalists at the top of those organizations, yeah, that's true. But you know what? That guy, that CEO, he ain't gonna be poor. He's gonna walk away. He's gonna be fine. As business is in fucking ruins, right? Like it's the individual workers who are going to be in trouble. So I would protect that business to make sure it's up and running, so it doesn't have the commensurate financial devastation within that community. People, because their breadwinner lost their livelihood. Fuck that.
Well, hold on. So
if you want to protect the elite class, is fine.
Well, what GSU said before in response to this was, you want to make it so businesses can't go under. What you just said is, well, hold on. What you just said was, we need to protect these businesses. Yeah. So what does that mean? We got to protect these businesses when we're talking about them not laying people off. Does it mean them not going under?
if they had made a bad financial
they did.
Which they did.
If they had sure. I'll go with this. Sure. If they made a bad financial themselves, right? Then yes. But like the banking industry, right, is supposed to be safe, right? Like this is where we tell people, like, put your money within a bank. Our system like relies on people interacting with the banking system, right? Like look at the marijuana industry that can't use banking, right? And look how the mess that is, right? We want people. All incentives within our society is to interact with the banking system, and so when the banks fail, right, to no fault of the depositors, then that's a problem. And
that's
the
why
depositors
should go up, right?
What? Sorry.
That's why you agree the FDIC.
Yeah, that's what you said. With businesses,
I want to make this more concrete to Lactoid, maybe, because I don't agree with Prime all the way on this point, but like I've been involved with private companies where you get paid tons and tons of money for contracts. The idea that none of that money is going to be in accounts that are greater than 250K is wild. It's beyond belief that you could actually think that. So these people are going to have to interact with a system in which they're above the FDIC amount often.
Exactly.
If not, I get always.
Okay, I get that. But there's a couple things you're missing here. So, first of all, they could insure the money over the $250,000, right? Like just like you insure if they build a factory worth $10 billion, they're going to have to buy private insurance to insure that entire building, and they can do that. And there's companies that offer that, and they should have to. If they're companies, they're capitalists. They should take a percentage of their profits and use that to pay for the insurance to protect their investment. That would make sense, first of all. And second, right, so there's no reason why the taxpayer should ever cover it. They should cover it. And then the second thing here, which I think is important as well, is, and this is actually a common trope that I'm seeing on Twitter of, it's through no fault of our own. Like fault. What is that? Like in a capitalist market, is it ever truly your fault if the market shifts and you go out of business? Was it U.S. Steel's fault that the Chinese started stamping out steel that was just cheaper? Or was there like, okay, the market has changed. This is more valuable than this now. And part of creative destruction is the less valuable industries don't keep up. Not like the vast majority of the time when you open a restaurant and you fail, it's not because like you're quote unquote at fault. It's because the market is oversaturated. There's too many fucking restaurants and you can't compete. Right. And if you put all your money in first of all, a risky bank, and you don't insure the money beyond of what you have the $250,000 for, then you are also taking a risk. The whole idea is rewarding risk and punishing risk when it's realized. And for some reason, over and over and over again, with this industry in particular, and a number of other ones, but this one, like the most, every time they fucking fail, we come back in and we pay the money to help the rich people.
So I'm going to go to Aiko, but like you've on one point, I can agree with you. At least I think we can find common ground. You talked about like having a private insurance. I didn't really consider that like a private insurance for your deposits. Okay, right. I think maybe I could say.
How did you not consider that? That's what a default swap is.
Shut the fuck up, dude. I'm talking to Lactoid.
I explained it to you. Like step by step.
Shut the fuck up. I'm talking to Lactoid, right? Like. Holy shit! Like, what the fuck? I'm having a conversation here. So, no, like that makes sense to me, right? If we have insurance, for that, like I can go through that far. I don't mind public investment.
Step by step, explaining it to him like he was 5.
I don't. Like I don't have I'm not ideologically opposed to that. In certain circumstances, this would be one of those circumstances. But if you want to say that we just don't insure these, take this completely out of that market, right? And we just focus on retail investors, meaning ordinary people, I think I could deal with that. Good, Aiko.
Yeah, that was actually a perfect segue because I wanted to bring this conversation in this direction because we have an expert on the panel. We have Doobie, who knows a lot about the insurance industry, is in it at a deep enough level to where he might be able to understand how doable this is. Earlier in the panel, out of curiosity, I looked it up. how much money is in the Federal Deposit Insurance Fund, and it was a smaller amount than I expected. It's $128 billion. So that's not like, one could argue that no, only the government can do this because the amount of money required to be able to insure all the banks in the country aren't at risk. Only the government can come up with that. But it seems to me that the insurance industry could pretty easily come up with $128 billion to do something like this.
No problem. $120 billion for the whole country?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
That's up to 250. No, it's up to 250,000. That's like what that number is supposed to represent. It's like that's what the banks are supposed to put in.
That's like
and they
what Credit Suisse does.
So you're actually like supposed to have more than that. But
sure, but if they could charge high enough premiums, like it would be worth it. They could charge the companies money to protect their assets, as they do with $10 billion factories, right? Amazon.
You know why they don't do it? Because we bail them out.
Right.
Like if you stop fucking bailing them out, that they would do this. The other thing that I think it's just important to add, because I think maybe people don't get it. Like, no one would lose all of their money, right? Like, understand that what you're talking about is when you go under the 1-to-1, people pull out their investments, but like nobody that has, let's say, 10 million is like walking away empty-handed. They're walking away with like 7.5 or 8 million because they invested in a bad investment, right? Like,
okay, but my question's for Doobie, and I just wanted to know, like, in the part of the insurance industry that you're helping to run, like, what would it take to set up something like that? Could it go beyond what FDIC currently does, and to what extent?
Elsewhere.
And
like,
would it itself need to be backed up by some other entity in order to make sure that it's able to like have its own risks taken care of? Or is Doobie not here?
Wait, were you asking that? What? Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm flabbergasted as to why you think I would know that. Right? So, like, I handle primarily commercial property insurance, right, and like workers' comp and shit like this. And the deepest side is like what are they called? Coverage towers, right? Insurance coverage towers, right? If I want to go into that, I can explain. But in terms of like bank regulations and where the insurance money is coming from for the FDIC and all this kind of shit, I don't fucking know. Like,
he's asking you whether you think, and this might still be above your pay grade here, but like you could have a private depositor insurance, and whether like the industry, a private market could handle that on that scale. Like if we take it completely out of the government hand.
So I got the best way to ask this, Doobie. So if somebody came to you and was like, Doobie,
does Credit Suisse exist?
Okay, yes. But we're going to Doobie. They didn't go to Credit Suisse, so they went to Doobie. They were saying, hey, Doobie, I got $5 million in the bank, and I'm scared this bank is like they got great interest rates, but I'm kind of scared they might go.
This is worse than I thought it would be, because no one has.
What's your answer?
Is like even a clue what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the insurance industry does it already.
Perfect. There you go. So why does the government need to do it?
I think that's fine. I think we're talking about
people do risky investments because they know that they will get bailed out.
And that's all this is.
That's why, right? Like if all of these people, like before they went under and collapsed and got taken over, right? And before, the FDIC was like, nobody is allowed to buy the bank because we're going to solve the problem, even though there were people that were already hawkish and ready to purchase the bank anyways, because big banks buying other big banks is evil and scary. We couldn't let the fucking market handle it, right? Yeah. But the thing is that like nobody's losing all their fucking money. They're losing like 10% plus legal fees and like what they need to do to get their money back. Like that's what they're losing. So if you're a company and you have all of your money in one fucking bank and you lose 10% and that destroys your company and you have to start doing layoffs, then you're the fucking you're just as faulty as the bank for not having multiple different areas where you have your income, not having liquid assets, not having enough low time preference to make sure that you have the property to maintain your business.
I want to ask y'all.
I want to ask this because I want to get to the heart of the matter. So let's move away from the specific example of SVB, right? And since the business focused clientele. So in the case of retail depositors, meaning you and me, right? Most people here. Retail depositors are going to have way less. Show yourself to the channel.
You might need to get a little closer to the mic. You were like cutting out.
Yeah.
Am I cutting out?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys.
We can hear you now.
Yeah.
We heard it was just that one part there. You started to like blip a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. So, talking about retail depositors, right? People have way less, including me. Sub to the channel. If my bank fails, right? Like the First Bank of America, whatever, right? If that fails, and that's like our regional bank, where the most of the community is invested in, like, do you think that the government should cover any of that? In terms of the depositor. So you don't think that?
Wait, Prime. I thought you said before. You said before. I think you specifically said on an individual basis, you're okay with people over 250,000 losing their investments or losing their deposit.
He was talking about VCs, probably not just regular that's why he's trying to switch the frame out.
Well, no, but I'm saying even for like regular everyday banks, like the depositors for those, like we're talking about people who have over 250
no.
in the bank.
Lactoid, you missed part of my question. What I asked was, should the government cover it at all? Meaning, should we have FDIC, federal insurance, period, for retail depositors?
Let's take your example.
Like me.
Let's take your actual example, right? So let's say the community, let's say there's 100 people, their money's in the bank, right? And then their books go below the 1-to-1 ratio, right? The bank collapses, and now their assets get distributed evenly amongst everyone that invested their money, right? So you had $100 in, so that means you get $90 back and you lost $10, right? And this happens to everybody. Someone else had 10K, they got 9K back, etc. And then they're still assuming that the contract that you signed with the bank didn't have like a stipulation that like, hey, it's a fucking investment. If we lose your money, we might lose your money. Just like if you were buying stocks, right? Let's say you had some guarantee with them that like all of your money they're supposed to keep. And if they lose your money, like, fuck you, you owe me my money. Then whoever owns that bank has to dip into their own assets, right? And so that person knows if they own that bank, right? Okay, if I make too many risky investments and I don't have insurance, I'm going to lose my mansion. I'm going to lose my yacht. I'm going to be penniless and destitute because I owe this money. So what I better do is I better make sure that I shore up whatever risky investments I'm doing to try and gain money so that I can run this bank with insurance.
What would make
That's how that would work.
Person owe money?
Now, have you guys ever?
Hold on. I want him to explain why he inserted that person is going to lose their yacht and those type of things. Because
they own the bank.
Yes, they own the bank, but that doesn't mean that they're going to lose their livelihood because the depositors are going to lose theirs. Like, those are two different things. Okay, and that's why
you are so listen. No. Please don't continue. He asked about about what one should do, right? Which is how banks should exist in a system, not our current banking system, right? Our current banking system has so many other levels of regulation and ways that things work. What we were talking about is the principle of what should be done.
Yeah, but I don't think you're understanding. Scott, listen, Scott.
No, trust me. You're the one lost in the sauce.
Wait, when you buy a car, do you pay to insure it?
Let me ask Scott a question. Scott, it takes, I can't remember if it's 250K or 500K, but it takes that to start a bank. And then you have people invest into that bank via being depositors. Those depositors can invest whatever amount that they want, which is what Prime's point is. When the money of those depositors is lost, I might lose my initial investment of whatever it is, but that's not going to be my total wealth. So you can lose a lot more than the owner of that bank. You set up this situation where you're presenting as if the owner of the bank is going to lose the most, when that's not true at all in any way.
What Scott's presenting is...
No, please don't tell me what I'm presenting.
You're presenting just an insurance company, but if the bank was the insurance company.
Right. He asked me what should be done. What should be done is that property is owned by a person, not fucking pseudo mixed with the fucking state and all of these other things. In a scenario where we're actually doing what we should do, a person owns a bank. And if that bank defaults and you have contracts where you owe people money, then your own assets will be taken if you owe people money.
So
okay. Before we get,
So I understand your ANCAP world, because I like to understand, even though
my ANCAP world where like people own property.
Wait, I'm trying to be charitable and you get pissed.
I'm losing my shit.
Nigga, I'm trying to understand you. Just shut the fuck up. So what I'm trying to understand from you is, what you're saying is that if somebody takes out money, if somebody invests in your bank, then the owner should be personally responsible for all of those investments, is what you're saying. That's what it sounds like you're presenting.
If you have a contract, if you have a contract that says I guarantee this monny, then that means you owe that person this money. If you don't pay this person that money, then you're liable for that money, including your own assets.
That's not the contracts that exist today, and you're advocating for that, right?
Right. We have so many other layers to banking regulations and things like that. Prime asked a simple question. I gave the answer. And then you got into something that is different from the question.
No, I just asked you questions.
Let's move on. So I'm going to Doobie, I'm going to Lactoid, and then I want to see if Pep, because she hasn't said anything, has something to add. So Doobie.
Have you guys ever heard of reinsurance?
I haven't. Explain.
It's when an insurance company buys insurance.
You're like, insurance companies insure each other. So, like, let's say you're an insurance company and you're insuring like 100,000 cars in an area, right, or in like a state, and there's a big ass hurricane or tornado or some shit. So then you have like hundreds or thousands, tens of thousands of claims to pay out. So what insurance companies do to protect themselves against massive losses like that is they will take out insurance on the liabilities they have, right? On the risk, right? And they just go to other insurance companies. So if I think all Scott is saying is like that, why shouldn't people be expected to get a similar kind of insurance on their bank portfolio, whatever it is, right? So just as if I got into a car accident, right, I wouldn't go to the government and say, hey, government, I paid $30,000 for this fucking car loan. Where's my money, government? Right? I probably say, oh shit, I probably should have insurance to make sure that my car loan is paid off if I get into a car accident, right? So I don't see how this is like any.
I think it is different. And Doobie, I think the end of your sentences keep getting cut off. And like we kept thinking that you're not done talking, but just be aware of that, buddy.
Not even the person, for the record, Doobie. The bank.
Let's go
to the bank should have that insurance.
Lactoid.
Yeah. So I think banks should have.
Yeah, he's
and right now they don't have it in the same way that insurance.
Doobie, you're cutting out. Apparently, like I was cutting out, you're cutting out. Definitely, we're missing pieces of what you're saying.
Yeah, and then he get mad and he talks louder because he think you're trying to interrupt him when he just keeps.
So Doobie, give it one more try, and then we'll go to Lactoid and then Pep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, buddy.
Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. All I was saying is that banks right now are not required to have reinsurance the same way that insurance companies are. Right. So I think this issue has already been solved by insurance companies. So I think they just need to do that thing. Right. They need to start saying, hey, if we're going to take on all this risk, we're going to have all these people putting their money into our bank. We need to make sure that there's money there for these people if our bank goes under, if there's a bank run. Right. If something happens and we can't give people, if we lose these assets. Right. I think having a similar system for the banking industry.
You cut out a little bit at the end, but we caught everything else. Lactoid and then Pep.
So I don't even think that like Doobie's suggestion is one way, right? One option, but that's not even like the only option here, because what I guess Scott and Doobie proposed is, well, what if the bank offered insurance on the deposits? That's fine, right? That would be a great service that the bank could offer. Like, this money is insured up to this amount, right? And then, we charge this amount, or there's some kind of like reduced interest rate or something along these lines. That's totally fine. But you wouldn't even need the banks to do it. You could have private insurance companies insure your bank deposits, just like they insure your house, your car. They can insure jewelry. They can insure business assets. They insure your small business, your coffee shop. They insure your work vehicles. They insure precious family heirlooms. They insure a bunch of shit, right? And so this idea of, and by the way, they even insure cash sometimes, right? They even insure cash. Why not we just transfer this idea of, when you own an asset, you pay to insure it. We just apply this to money too. We apply it to like the money that you have in your bank account for everybody. Like just like if you buy a $30,000 car or if a $150,000 house, like I'm paying. Look, I didn't pay $150,000 for my house, and I'm paying insurance for it. I'm not expecting the government to pay for my insurance.
Let's go to Pep.
Yeah, honestly, this is all new to me, and this isn't in the arena of stuff that I was kind of like looking up and reading up on today. So I don't feel like I have a ton to contribute on this, but I do think that, yeah, I think making the bank responsible for having like a backup plan in case something like this happens is a really good idea. And whether that's via requiring their customers to have their own insurance, or whether it's requiring the bank to have insurance over a certain amount, like anything over what the FDIC insures, then I think those are both like, I don't understand why we don't already have that, honestly. Because it absolutely makes sense. Like, you should always have, there should never be just like, I feel like nothing should just have a fail state. There should always be like a backup plan. Or even if there is like a fail state, there's like a, and this is what we do then to prevent things from getting worse. And it seems like that's what, yeah, both the insurance things sound right.
It's actually really easy to answer that question.
My problem is that like, that we're treating like I've already like conceded the point that all depositors aren't the same, right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to say that you know, people who are not retail depositors, right, like people who have assets greater than 250,000, that's the hard number we're going to settle for, right? That they need to have insurance over and beyond. Okay, maybe I'm willing to listen to it, right? If you're saying that businesses need to have a private insurance, okay, I'm willing to listen to that. But like our libertarian friends here are for getting rid of the FDIC in general, for
I don't love that
basic insurance, right? For everyone, for you and me. And I think like we have to engage with the banking system, right? Our society's built on engaging in the banking system. If you are unbanked, right, and there are like millions of people, right, there's a whole list of advantages that
you're also cutting out again.
Oh my god, that sucks. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's Discord or something. But
we'll see for people who don't own houses or cars. Right?
So, well, hold on. I'll deal with that separately, right? But like, there's a whole list of issues. Fuck. God damn it. You're distracting me. Address that too. But there's a whole list of issues that happen if you're unbanked, right? If you don't have that access. So
I've been there.
Like,
yeah, I totally know that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure you do. Yeah. And so I don't want to put additional barriers. Oh, can you not afford the banking insurance you need, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
A little bit of money, right, that comes out of your tiny paycheck, right? Additional money coming out for that, like no
it would
thanks.
Be another
right?
way to like nickel and dime people with all kinds of fees and things like that. That's why I think it has to be over the 250.
Exactly. Yeah. So I wouldn't get rid of the FDIC then, right? And I think you're saying that as well. That'd be a problem. Yeah. And yeah, like Black, I'm a fucking socialist. So we want to talk about those houses.
We all get free houses and cars too, right?
Let's be clear.
Free jewelry and family heirlooms.
This is just bad economics, right? Like,
no, it's not.
Listen, first of all, nobody loses all their fucking money when the bank fails, right? They lose a percentage of their money until it's determined that the bank is failing, right? Then they get most of their money back, right? When you're saying like, oh, well, we need the government to insure these things, or just hear me out. If the government when the government bails out banks and when the government insures things, what it does is it allows the banks to engage in riskier behavior. Both the insurance of individuals that are banking that have less than 250,000 collectively added up, and the fact that like they know that certain banks are too big to fail, allows them to put their money in really, really risky investments for high return on investment, because they know if the whole system fucking falls, that they'll be covered and they'll be protected and they'll get to walk away. What we're talking about is instead is having a private system where you go to the bank, you sign a contract, and the contract says, I owe you all of the money that you put in this bank. If the bank fails, right, they're still liable for that money, and they end up in court and all these other things. So to stop that,
the bank
with
all of its clients. This doesn't make sense. You keep saying stupid shit, and they just let you
I'm not saying stupid shit. It's just like you're.
How would a bank maintain one-to-one parity if Amazon walks up to them and says, "I want to create an account. I have a payroll of $100 million." How the fuck is this bank gonna ensure that, hey, I'll be able to give you your money back in case the bank fails?
They go to Geico.
This idea that every bank has one-to-one parity with all of the investments that they receive or deposits they receive is absolutely bananas and stupid.
It's not bananas and stupid just because you don't understand it, right?
No, I understand what you're saying. The
since you don't understand it, listen. No, it's very fucking simple, right? I'm a bank. I have $100 billion deposited. I have a balance sheet, right? I have a certain amount that I need to keep in the bank. Setting aside the whole problem with fractional reserve banking, okay? So I need to make money. So instead, we engage in fractional reserve banking and we lend out more money than we actually have, right? Instead of charging fees for you to bank, which is how you should do banking, right? Instead, what we do is we keep. I know that's not what you're asking.
You avoid all questions. I'm not avoiding questions. Yes. I asked you a simple ass question, and you going off on some stupid shit that you know.
Because I have to explain it to you like you're a fucking toddler.
You don't have to explain anything to me.
Don't show up to a panel about banking when you don't know anything about banking.
Okay. So I don't know anything about banking, so you should be able to answer simple ass questions. How is a bank gonna keep one-to-one parity to ensure all the investments that come through that bank?
Question.
This is idiotic.
I'm in the process of answering the question so that you can actually understand
to match the $100 million of investments.
You keep calling me dumb just because you're interrupting, you're not listening, and you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So let me fucking finish so that you can understand. I'm a bank. I have $100 billion, right?
Where do you get $100 billion from?
Oh my fucking God.
Just
listen.
Okay. You think banks just open up with $100 billion?
I think you had your hand up, right?
That's a reasonable thing that we should just allow him to say.
Should I go over a timeline of the entire history of humanity? How did this person begin to sell apples? Well, it all began with apple seeds. Like, dude, let's just assume there's a fucking bank, okay?
Let's say stupid shit and Prime's gonna allow it. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on. No,
you keep saying I'm saying stupid shit, but you just don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Banks just come out with hundreds of billions of dollars. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm stupid.
All right, so SVB had like over $100 billion in assets. So okay,
$230 billion in assets.
So okay,
no, it doesn't exist.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you have people deposit from all different sources. Let's say 100 million. Doesn't fucking matter what the number is. Okay, and half of that money you take out and you invest in places assuming that there's growth. Some of those things fail, some of those things succeed, okay? Your normal return on investment is like 4 to 5%, and then the money that you give the people that have deposited is roughly 1%, giving you 3 to 4%, generally speaking, to where your bank grows and you keep everybody's money, everything's good to go, okay? But the problem is that sometimes things collapse. Sometimes the market crashes. Sometimes you have, the Fed increases interest rates, and all of us, and at the same time, you have a bunch of money already loaned out that you don't have cash on hand. Okay? So all we're saying is that when you say, how do you achieve 1-to-1 ratio? Well, unless you're not doing fractional reserve banking and you're charging people money to store your money, right? And you're not actually keeping their money, right? Unless you're doing that, what you do is you get insurance and you say, I have $100 million in assets, okay? In the event that something bad happens, will you give me $50 million so that I can continue to pay people out in the event that things don't occur? And then the insurance company goes, cool, let's take a look at your books. Okay, that's going to cost you, $1.5 million a year in order to do that. And then that's what you do. The insurance company makes $1.5 million. Now, in the event that something bad happens with that one specific bank, they lose $50 million that year, but they're gaining $1.5 million from like all these other banks. And so they're still able to profit. It's just basic shit. That's how you achieve 1-to-1, is that you have insurance to cover all of the shit that you're losing.
So
dog fart. It's like so bad.
Fart.
Yeah, like it's just the dog randomly farted in the room. And it's just.
I thought you were making a porn reference. All
right, let's go. No. I'm muting myself to deal with this.
Sure. GSU, if you want to respond, fine. If not, like, if anyone else wants to jump in.
I don't want to respond at all.
Okay. All right. So yeah, like,
Oh shit! I was muted. I have some stuff to say, maybe.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think that instead of, I feel like it's two different ways of. There's two different ways of addressing facets of this broadly, and I know that he's not gonna like the one that requires more regulation, but I feel like the one where it requires if the bank goes broke and people, maybe he said that individual people never lose all their money. Well, if a company loses all their money and then they can't pay people who are living paycheck to paycheck, then there are people who are impacted who are losing all their money. So indirectly, it can fuck over a lot of people. It's not just like an inconsequential thing. Secondly, I think that the whole idea of like, you just take them to court to get their money back, that completely excludes an entire class of people from doing that. So I think those are both kind of failure points for that.
So if an individual loses all of their money, then what you have is you have criminal activity from people that need to go in prison. It's really that simple. If a bank loses the ability to cover, if the bank loses their ability to cover all of their assets, right, then they have to pay out everyone, right? If some people lose all of their money, then what you're saying is that the bank had like a tiered system where they intentionally gave money to other people as opposed to giving money to like some people, and that's like another level of criminal activity.
I think you're misunderstanding. I mean that if like a startup, for example, loses like, I don't know, like 80% of its funds or something like that, even if it's not however much you think, they lose enough so that they can't do payroll for everybody and a bunch of people lose their jobs. There's still far-reaching impact. So I feel like having it be a like, oh, shit's risky, this is just kind of how it goes, rather than having regulations to prevent it from happening in the first place, kind of sucks.
Yeah, but also there's a flip side to this coin, right? Which is that instead of banks being responsible and gaining insurance, we put in regulations that allow large banks will get around, that massive corporations, if the left prefers those terms more, not saying you specifically, right? Massive corporations will get around, engage in regulatory capture, know that they're too big to fail, and know that their investments are shored up by the American taxpayer. But even worse than the American taxpayer, the Federal Reserve, of which they also happen to work at. And what ends up happening is money prints out, and instead of simply allowing those losses to be felt, right, from the people that made the riskiest investments, and instead going to better places with more growth, what you end up with is inflation. You end up with inflation. You end up with everyone pays.
But that would be the bank, right? The bank made those risky investments. Like, the bank should be the one that feels it, right? Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
As well as the depositors that put their money into a fucking risky investment. If I go gambling and I lose money, then how is it like the casino's fault?
It's not supposed to be a gamble, right? That's not how we interact with the economy. That's not how people interact with the economy. Is that when I go to the bank, right? I go to my local.
You just don't understand. You just don't understand, bro. Like, stop arguing because you just don't understand how banks work. Like, you got to understand that Overlord Fabian understands this shit. He's way smarter. Like, you just got.
Well, also, can we stop
it doesn't
saying?
Matter. It doesn't matter what it's supposed to be. What matters is what it is. And if you're investing in a private firm, right, that is also investing your money elsewhere,
public option, first of all, but
that's kind of. So everything's always going to be exactly this way. We can't change anything. But also, I had a side question. Like, if, all the banks are just going to do regulatory capture, whatever, they're going to write their own laws. There was something that was trying to get passed I was reading about, it's called like fiduciary standard or something like that. And it was set to be passed, then it got knocked out, and now people are trying to bring it back again. That would require any financial institution to be working for the benefit of, primarily always for the benefit of the customer. And so they would have to be open, transparent, That would kind of alleviate a lot of the, like, if banks are like writing their own regulations, they would at least have to be regulations that also help the customer in that case. So it would still be less impactful.
It shouldn't be for the
market would already do
for
that.
The depositors. Let's go to Aiko.
Yeah, I keep hearing too big to fail, but I think in this is an instance where the bank is allowed to fail. The shareholders are screwed. The employees are all fired. The assets are being liquidated. This is not like this is a fundamentally different handling than what we saw in 2008, at least. Like the people who are making the investment, I mean, at the very least, we can say that this isn't too big to fail. They are at least, right? This is a failed bank. It's not coming back. The shareholders aren't like getting any value for their investment. Yeah.
It's a compromise between the free market and too big to fail. It's a middle.
So like,
but my question is,
but then we're going to go to you. I gotta say this though. Like, individuals don't look at putting money in the bank as an investment, right, or a risky investment, and it shouldn't be that way, right? Or we get runs on banks, like the
no, but that's because it's federally insured.
That's what causes runs.
Yeah, exactly. It should, and I'm saying it should be federally insured.
No, you don't understand.
Look. You as an individual, you don't think about that.
You've lost. No, he's lost so much because he believes in the state.
No, it's
you think we
stop,
should have states and
DSU.
countries.
You're trolling. You're just being doobie now.
No.
You as an individual,
Scott.
If you were a millionaire, you would.
Scott.
You're not a millionaire. That's why you don't.
Scott. Let me get it out. So the whole point, right? Like I am forced myself, me, Prime, to interact with the banks, right? Like Twitch doesn't send me a fucking a bag full of money, right? They send it through a bank, right? Like I have to either PayPal, which is not quite a bank, but or
that bag full of money is a treasury note, anyways.
Yeah. So exactly, sure. But anyway,
you should get them to write to
I have to interact, right? Like, and especially in our increasing digitized economy, people have to interact with the banking system. And to say that, well, this is a risky investment. No, as people understand banking, it's to protect their investments. Hey, son or daughter, right? When you are like get a job, right? What do you do with that money? You put that money in a bank, right? No. And then you hopefully get a. Then you invest it somewhere else, right? And that's what comes in. But the bank itself is supposed to be safe. And the problem with we just allow people to ordinary individuals to take a haircut, right? Is that you'll have cascading bankruptcies across the country when people can't handle a $200 or $300 what was it? Or I think it's $400 emergency, right? Right, like if something around those numbers, right? They can't have that emergency.
They don't have $250,000 in the bank. Then
what?
I know, but
talking about FDIC amount. Y'all don't believe
I've already said that. Lactoid, I've already said that. I'm talking about small small depositors. Now you got me doing it. Depositors, like me, right? So like I'm not talking about above 250,000 right now. So those individuals, if they take that haircut, then you have bankruptcies. You got people out on the streets.
Prime, I want to respond. I haven't been able to talk in a long time. Can I respond? I haven't been able to talk in a while. I've been trying to get in. So
Lacto's been trying to get in. But
listen, Prime, and then you hold on. You have to understand that you are gambling. You bought into the maniacal bankers' world, and you decided to use their digital currency. You don't understand that that's a gamble that you're making, but to participate in this economy, you're taking that gamble, and that's a road too far. What should have happened is you should have told Twitch, if you want my content, you will send me cash money in the mail. And then you could keep your money under your couch. Hopefully it doesn't get stolen. And you don't have to participate
when people
in
start
this
trolling because they can't deal with my arguments. But
that's what you should
do. If you go to get a haircut.
I'm going to get a Lactoid, and then I promise you, Scott, it'll be a Scott hour as usual. Okay, Lactoid, please.
I'm going to address this particular situation because Aiko said it and a few other people said it where, well, it's just the shareholders going into business. It's not the depositors. And like the thing that comes to my mind is like, where is the sympathy for the shareholders, right? So if I'm like a small like retail investor in Robinhood and I put all my money into this bank, now I lose everything? And then you might say, well, but you decided to put that in there. You took the risk. Well, the FDIC only covers up to $250,000. So everybody who put in more than that 250,000 also took the risk, right? Well, no, that's different because it's a deposit, not an investment. Well, but it is kind of investment because you're giving the money to the bank and they're taking that and they're investing it right away and they're giving you an interest rate because they're taking that money and holding on to it, just like shareholders do. So my question, Prime, do you think the FDIC should insure my Robinhood investments up to $250,000?
No, I don't think they should.
Why?
Because
that's where I keep all of my money. I will be broke, Prime, if there's a stock run and the stock market goes down too quickly.
You don't need to invest in Robinhood to function in society. You're making having to bank.
I use that for my bank. They have banking cards that you can use. You can literally deposit right out of your spending. Oh, you have other options, but there's also other options than a venture capital bank. There's other options, but I'm using this one.
Sure. Again, I'll give you like I said, the venture capital bank. I'm willing to talk about that in terms of requiring people to have private insurance. So I've already given you that. So that's why I moved to the retail space. That's why I want to test your principles here, right? But you also don't think that the FDIC should exist for retail depositors.
Right. Okay, but I'm a retail stock. I have my own stocks. I'm a retail investor. Why can't those be protected in the same way if I'm a retail investor in a bank putting it into?
I think it's we have a difference in thinking, an ideology as to what the banking should be, right? Banking should be the safest investment, the absolute safest investment that an individual could engage in, right? And I think that not only should be a safe investment, because of its central role within daily life, that those people should be protected. Because what happens when they're not protected is that ordinary people end up on the streets. Right? We had the 2000.
Same with the stock market.
That's what happens. Sure. You don't have to engage with the stock market in the same way. That's not. And like I said, this is a difference in ideology here, because I think banking should be that safe investment. I think we should have public banking available. I think that should compete with private banks within the market. That we have the absolute safest investment where your money isn't being gambled whatsoever, right? That we want our citizens to put their money there, right? To get a little bit of interest rates, right? To be able to get low interest loans and then invest that and grow the economy that way. That's what that banking should be. The stock market is not the same. It does not have the same purpose.
Okay.
All right. So I said,
to emphasize that point, can I just point out that I looked it up. Robinhood has its own risk disclosure statement saying all investments involve risk, including the loss of principal, past performance of security, cryptocurrency, or financial product does not guarantee future results or returns. Keep in mind that while diversification might help spread risk, it does not assure a profit or protect against loss. Now, that's not the kind of risk disclosure that you will see when you open a checking account at a bank. What you'll see there instead is your deposits are protected by FDIC.
Okay. Wait.
Those are two very different.
No. Iko.
He wants that to be the case.
So I want it to be the case, but right now,
silly.
no. But Iko, here's where you're wrong though. After $250,000. Everything that you just described about Robinhood applies equally to all the money you put in your deposit.
No, I agree. But if you were to deposit more than $250,000, then you would get a different disclosure from the bank, like a different set of the bank's not going to tell you that your deposits over $250,000 are insured by FDIC. It's not going to give you that same kind of assurance.
Okay, guys. Seriously. We're talking about what should banking be, right? But let's set that aside from what I think banking should be and talk about this idea of the individual that invests. And you said, well, see, the FDIC, and we keep talking about this, and they say, but you're against the FDIC, and see, that's the problem. It's so silly. You as an individual that's not a millionaire, you don't think about any of these things because the FDIC exists, right? The fact of the matter is that because it exists, you don't think about it. If you're a millionaire, you still don't think about it if you only have $1 or $2 million, because most of your money is in assets. The only people that actually think about this are people that own businesses, which obviously they should be thinking about where they put their money. That's part of owning a fucking business. Or people that are billionaires. Then they put, right? You don't put $10 million in a fucking bank account. If you have a couple $1 million, you put it in 3 or 4 different banks that are all federally insured anyway. So even the millionaires aren't dealing with this. We're talking about a very small cohort of people or people that own businesses. Now, yes, I understand the idea of like, well, what should banking be? I love that you kept saying, well, people are going to have to take a haircut. People are going to have to take a haircut. Well, when I go get a haircut, I should get a haircut. That is basically what it is that I want, because it's a service being provided to me. There's an expectation based off of the trust in our relationship that if I give you money, you're going to give me a product or a service in return. The same is true with banking. You go somewhere and say, I have all this cash. I don't want to get robbed by robbers, right? I want to be able to use this new digital age. I want to be able to buy things online. I want to be able to do stuff with it. So you're providing a service to me, just like a hairdresser that's giving you a haircut. They're providing a service to you. And you have some form of contract with them. You give them your money. Now that bank has to make a profit in order to take your money. There's only two ways to do this. Either one, they charge you money to store your money. That's number one. That's not fractional reserve banking. That's, okay, you want to put $1 million in here? It's going to cost you $10,000 for 1 year to put it in there. After the year, it'll only cost you $100 to pull the money out. But if you pull out a certain amount of money, then it's going to charge you a certain amount of money in order to pull your money out, because we're holding and protecting your money and allowing you to use our service to pay for things online. So you owe us money. Or we can have fractional reserve banking, where they keep a certain percentage of the money and then they loan out the rest of the money, or they buy in investments, right? I cannot, like, the idea that, like, but see, we're not talking about individuals that have $10,000 that put $10,000 in the bank, and you're saying, but because you want to get rid of that, right? That makes, what do these people do? That's an entirely different world. If that money wasn't insured, people would behave very differently, and they would go to banks that are highly trusted, that have never had problems, and those would be the banks that people use, and people that want to make more return would put it in a slightly riskier bank.
Yeah, I hate that. Yeah, they would behave differently. We'd have a lot more bank runs, like we used to before the FDIC. The whole point of the
you don't know
FDIC,
anything about bank runs. The reason that we used to have a lot of bank runs is not about
you can't
insurance.
have knowledge if
it's
you
about,
disagree, Brian.
No,
You're
it's about the fact that up until the early 1900s, and even during the early 1900s, the overwhelming majority of our economy was agriculture. And agriculture has sowing seasons and has harvesting seasons. And so what would end up happening is people would engage in too many long-term investments. And then when the harvesting season came in, people would need to pull money out of the banks in order to hire labor, in order to do things, in order to do a specific amount of work in a specific amount of time. But we didn't used to engage. That's why we had this silent crash of 1921, where the government didn't get involved at all, and it fixed itself in 14 months. The problem is the fucking government involvement in the market in the first place, and that's why FDR ruined the fucking economy and elongated the Great Depression.
All right. Okay, that's... Sorry, I can't go down another tangent with you. Like, we're a few tangents deep. Like,
FDR.
Like, yes, people would engage differently if they didn't have a bank stop. Like, and by people, I mean regular people, regular depositors would engage differently. I think, again, this is a different idea. Like, the whole point is that we want this to be like 100% safe investment, because from there we get.
No, I agree. When I go to a haircut, I don't want them to fuck up my hair.
Okay, so
100% of the time, I don't want them to fuck up my hair.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, because we get advantages within our economy when we do have that, right? When people say they can rely, because money is the bank, right? Build an economy, which we have, around that banking system, in which people can make actual risky investments, right? Like starting a business or like buying a house, right? That they don't have all the money. Do all that stuff because we have that banking system at the center. Now, if private banks can't do the job, and it seems like they can't, well then let's have more public banking options. Great. So
why would you nationalize the banks? Like, is this fucking
I didn't say
Germany?
national, but I didn't say. Did I say nationalize the banks? I didn't say nationalize the banks. I love to nationalize the banks, but I'm not talking about nationalizing.
They're already nationalized.
Whatever. I'm talking about having a public option, right? Like a postal service banking or something like that, right? Like So let's have like places that are absolutely safe that don't need to invest your money, that don't need to make a profit, that can hold that money and provide some sort of interest rate for the public or something like that, or however that works. We could have that through a public option. Let's do that, whatever. But we need to have this central cornerstone of our economy, the banking system, right? And it needs to be safe. However we do that, however that's done, it needs to be safe. And to build up from there, or instead you'll have catastrophic effects throughout the whole system.
Would you
expect this money?
What if it didn't pay interest?
Inflation? Would you expect this money to grow with inflation, Brown?
Would I expect that?
In whatever this public bank is? Because if it's gonna have to move with the overall economy that is using investments, it's unlikely that you're gonna be able to keep up not using investments, right?
Well, yeah, current private banks can't match the inflation rate.
I'm just pointing out that, like, to create a vehicle that could pay out, that could store your money and not invest it, and also pay to keep up with inflation, becomes, I think, mathematically impossible at some point.
Yeah. It's mathematically impossible unless you invest in the stock market to beat inflation.
Or you could just charge the taxpayer for this public bank, and we could just cripple our economy.
But we had public banking before and it cripple our economy. Like, and other countries have public banking and it doesn't cripple their economy. So, like, I don't buy.
They don't pay 4% interest
at all,
though.
Right? Like,
they don't pay the interest to keep up. They don't pay the interest to keep up with inflation, though. They can't.
Sorry, say that again, please. Go ahead. I didn't hear you.
You can't. I mean, the bank. There's a reason the banks don't pay enough interest to cover inflation, because it's just not financially feasible. Like, the only way to be right. So this public bank could also, I'm guessing, couldn't really pay interest rates that would be able to beat inflation either, right?
Well, of course
they should just print more money.
Well, hold on. How could the public bank give the interest enough, like, to beat inflation? How could they do that?
So, like, I'm sorry. What are you laughing at? Like, you got something to say?
The public banking option is so funny because it's like, look, if you're not investing this money anywhere, right, then you can't actually give anybody any additional funds for keeping money in your bank, right? If you were to do that, then you would have to charge the taxpayers to fund people with large amounts of money getting more money. Right? Like, it would be a reverse wealth redistribution, right? Or you would have a bank where your banking is 100% safe, but if you put money in it, you will get zero money. You will get zero growth in your money. So everyone would just use private banks anyways, because the FDIC and the Fed have already proven that if you put your money in private banks, you're going to get to keep your money because it's not actually an investment. They're just going to insure it, and they'll cause inflation anyways.
Well, Scott, the one thing you're missing, though, is what Prime is saying. There's a lot of benefits that come with banking that, like, is not interest. So, like, being able to, like, get your paychecks, being able to, like, make payments online. Like,
yeah, but you can do all that with private banks now.
Well, you can, but what Prime is saying, like let's imagine we had a public bank that didn't pay any interest, but it also, like, was 100% safe because it's public and it provided those services, right? You could do that.
Yeah, and if you stopped bailing out private banks and you had a public option, what would occur is that, without a doubt, private banks would just have credit default swaps and they would be profitable, and public banks wouldn't make any money, and no one would be stupid enough to put their money in a public bank, and then the public banks would go away, and then we'd return to this fucking cycle with solving no problems.
I have a question. This may be a stupid question. Like I said, this is all kind of out of my realm of expertise, but how would a public bank differ from a credit union, and how are credit unions functional but a public bank wouldn't be?
So a credit union is essentially like a bank, but instead of and this is basically the word escaping me, but essentially the shareholders are the people who invest in the bank. So it's basically restricting the group of people who could be the shareholders to just people who put money in the bank. It's like a workers cooperative sort of, but for like a bank. So they can still be profitable because they still charge interest, and they still charge interest on loans, and they still invest the money, but just, like, the ownership structure is a little bit different, right? If you want
to not selling shares.
Yeah, they're not selling shares to anybody who doesn't invest in the bank.
Got it. Okay.
And also, to be clear, like banks can be a hedge against inflation. I mean, I think I'm the only person old enough on this panel to remember the last time we had an inflation problem, which was in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And I remember certificates of deposit, 5-year CDs with going at about 11, 12% interest rate that you could lock in. And people were, that was the only time I've ever seen it. It's a very strange period in history because now, up until like right now, you'd get like 1% on a CD if you were to try to do it. But there are times when, like now and like then, when there are some sort of banking hedges against inflation. It doesn't have to just be stock market. And of course, it's less risky because it's a guaranteed rate.
I mean, to be fair, fractional reserve banking causes inflation.
Yeah, I'm just saying you can use bank, like if you were to have a public bank, I can imagine them paying interest rates that go up or down with inflation.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, like, unless you pay to put your money in the bank, right, and that's how they make their funds, banks will cause inflation. Impossible for them not to if they're loaning it out.
And it's well, good.
So that segues into another question I wanted to make, because nobody's really been talking about this, because everyone's been talking about, I'm talking about out in the media, talking about the loss of, or the watering down of Dodd-Frank in 2018. But back in 2008, everyone was talking about the repeal of Glass-Steagall, right? And the fact that this was a commercial bank that was making investments that would have been expressly illegal before 1998. So what do we think about that? Like, should commercial banks be doing these kinds of investments, or should that firewall be, reintroduced?
I thought Scott was like addressing something like that. I didn't bring that up because I
wasn't
thought
talking about Glass-Steagall. No.
And I don't even want to specifically talking about Glass-Steagall, but just that, like, you were talking about there were two options there for the bank to make. Maybe I misunderstood. That's fine.
No. I'm talking about the difference between fractional reserve banking and traditional banking. Traditional banking that we had, before we came up with the brilliant idea of intentionally causing inflation and increasing the money supply and having a house of cards based off of fiat currency.
Right, but you also said there were two ways for a bank to make money, and one of them was to make these investments. And before Glass-Steagall, they couldn't make those kind of investments.
So,
yeah, but they were still making investments by making loans, like mortgages and things like that.
Right.
I wasn't making a distinction between investing in the stock market and investing in mortgages, for example, right? Like I was just saying that you either make investments or you charge money to store your money.
So, with public banks, right? Like the difference is, where the investments that they make, right? So the investments have to go to the community that they serve, right? And whatever the size of that community is, right? So whether it's the local community, the state, right, or otherwise, right? So we want banks that the purpose of their investments is to grow that local economy, wherever that local economy happens to be. That's a completely different sort of investment than how like large banks operate, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, great. So
right, but it's no difference in terms of fractional reserve banking and the fact that it causes inflation.
Okay, so
what I'm talking about is like, so if you have a bank, right, that loans out money, right, and like I put $1,000 into the bank, and then they only keep 10%, right? It creates more money because they take $900 and they loan it to someone else, and then they make a purchase, and then that person puts like 810 in. It increases money supply, which increases inflation, which devalues the dollar, which mostly hurts the poor and helps the uber wealthy.
Sure. That's another conversation. But
well, wealthy don't hold on to money, they hold on to assets. That's the thing. Because they own property. So and then they also take loans and the loan is different than the interest rate, so they don't even use their own money really. They're using banking loans.
I know, but this. I'm sorry, this is not like this is less towards you, more towards Lactoid and GSU, right? Talking about like how you make money there, like the investments go into the local economy, right? The point of these private banks is to make money for their share. That's their number one concern. And it's to make a profit beyond like the operating of the bank, right? Correct? Right. So we lose as individuals who are, if you take away that incentive, right? That profit incentive or that profit margin, and then invest it within the community. That's where you have like your ability to make up the difference here, right? So you're getting rid of that, and then it changes the type of investments you are doing. Am I going to invest some sort of far away like diamond conglomerate and real estate, or I'm going to invest into property in my and then
yeah, I mean, you keep cutting out.
Oh, I'm real sorry, guys. I don't know why that's happening.
It's like a Discord setting might have like
it might be
from an
Discord
update.
Yeah, it might be something like that. I don't know why that's happening. But did you catch most of what I said?
No, I get what you're saying. The problem with that is that like what you're talking about is smart money versus dumb money, right? And so when you want to specifically invest in the local community, you can make smart decisions within the local community, but the amount of smart decisions that you can make is limited because you're only investing in the local community. And so what you're doing is you're actually holding yourself back from making more profit. And you make, well, I don't care about making more profit because I want the local community to be the one doing better, not some rich fat cat somewhere else. But the problem is that like when you incentivize the smart money, right, to go to the best place possible, that actually helps out. That helps out everybody. Now, if you prefer a bank, right, and you have a certain value, right, I as an individual value my local community and I want my bank to value, then I might take like a 0.1% less growth on the money that I keep in the bank because I know that it's affecting my local community, and that means I'm going to live in a better place with better things. And that's just a difference of value, right? And so you can allow that to compete in the open market, but like in terms of like a public bank, right? The problem is that it's not really functioning as like the way that you're saying, right? What it's really doing is that the state is setting up like a bureaucracy of like the ways that people can invest and get loans from said bank under the assumption that it would be that they would gain some profit from that, right? And then so the bank is still invested in making investments and hoping for a return on investment, and they can still fail just the same way another bank is. The only difference is that the state is the one that is making those decisions as opposed to the private entity. And if that's competing in a market, like it's usually going to lose in terms of the market. But if you want that, that's fine. I mean, other than the fact that the government's the one doing it.
Okay, I'll have to address that in a second. But Lactoid,
I'll be right back.
Sure. Oh, and guys, we were like way into bonus time, right? Like, Pep, like we end at 11:30, like, but like sometimes we just keep talking. So we're like in that moment. So if you have to leave, like no worries. Like I don't want you have to stay here.
I might have to leave soon. For sure.
Okay. All right. Yeah. But just like shout out to Pep.
This was good stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. This is your first time here, so I don't want you to think that like expect this after 11:30 you can just like fuck off, right? So it's okay.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. It was good
sure.
times. I'll hopefully see you guys around.
Yeah, Pep. You were fantastic. We'd love to have you in the future. And hopefully we can give you a topic that you feel better prepared for.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a good
See y'all.
So you can go Lacto and then GSU if you want to respond to me or anything. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were. Did you have a question for me, or just,
no? I said stuff about like what the purpose of a bank and how a bank should work and all that stuff, and because you were questioning me on banking, so I responded.
Right. So I thought a lot of that was to Scott, but he also said
that was to you mostly.
Okay. I mean, shit. I understand like your desire for like the purpose of banking, right? This idea of, you mentioned multiple times the kind of convenience aspect of it. You know, if maybe this is something we can come halfway on as well. If there was like a zero interest like public deposit box that you could put money into, and that like you could take your paycheck to, and you could like spend money on a card from, and like it was safe, like it was in the public deposit box, but you didn't get interest on it, right? You have to risk your money if you want it to multiply. But everybody has access to like that tool that's sort of necessary, just like they have access to money, right? This is like the new money. It's like the public deposit box that you get money to, and then you get the card. I wouldn't actually be all that opposed to that. That wouldn't be a bad deal.
Do that cost money, right?
It would cost money.
It would cost the taxpayer. It would cost taxes in order to maintain the money at all.
Well, but here's the thing I'm thinking about, Scott. So it would a little bit, but you wouldn't be paying any interest on it. And I think printing money, like the actual cost of printing money, could be more than just maintaining this.
Well, yeah. I would love to get rid of fractional reserve banking, right? Like, and if you're just depositing money. Well, no. If they're not loaning out the money, listen. If they're loaning out the money, then there's risk. Period. There's no such thing as zero risk. There is risk. And if you're doing it by the state, it's probably going to be riskier than private companies doing it, right? Because the economic calculation problem has never been fucking solved, right? Like the fact of the matter is that central planners aren't going to be able to do it as well as an economy of competing businesses where some businesses are allowed to fail. That's very important.
Oh,
right?
I know.
So if they're loaning out money, right?
Okay, I understand. I'm leaving aside fractional reserve banking for a second. Okay, I'm just trying to narrow in because I want to control for the different objections that Prime has. Okay, one of the objections is incredibly fair. You can't. Yes, the point of controlling for certain things is you intentionally leave out certain things.
No, because you need the entirety of
yeah, you can't like start from the beginning of like money. Like I'm gonna black pill you on money. Money is evil. This is why you can't.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I'm not using fractional reserve banking to talk shit about fractional reserve banking. What I'm saying is either this public bank loans money or it doesn't loan money. If it doesn't loan money, then it's not reserve banking, right? Like it's just holding your money.
I know. So here's the way it would work. Okay. You would have a public bank, basically we can call it the public deposit box, okay? And you can put your money into it, you can get your paychecks there, and you have this little plastic card that you get, it's like a debit card, and you can spend from that. And the money in there is completely safe, right? It's never gonna go bankrupt, right? Because it's the government. It pays no interest. I just wanna see if Prime is on board with that. Because if Prime is on board with that, I'm on board with that because for two reasons. First of all, then we've essentially, that's his issue. The issue is like the convenience factor of the technology. And then the other reason is I believe we put a lot of money into making money, right? Pennies, nickels, quarters, like those are expensive to manufacture. We also spend a lot of money manufacturing dollar bills. We have entire printers. We hire people to man those printers. We have to send that money out. We have to send armored guards to send out that money in trucks, and they wind up at banks. And then people have to handle that money. And when you go to the store, if you're paying with cash, you have to physically sort through the money in order to pay the fucking cashier. And you have to use pennies, which, you know, the value now with inflation, the value of a penny is less than the time value of reaching down to pick it up. Sure. So all of this costs a fuck ton of money to maintain. I think it'd be cheaper just to have
cash spreads disease too.
And cash spreads disease. COVID. We don't want COVID, do we? So I'm thinking it would be cheaper to just have like the public deposit box where everyone gets like a little credit card that they can spend with no interest rate. Prime, are you on board with that?
I'm on board with that.
Okay. And then banks can do whatever they want.
You just sold him central banking digital currencies so that the World Economic Forum can have control of what you can and can't do with your fucking money. And inflation will go rampant once they're ready to start their new fucking wars.
No, if you want to buy drugs, if you want to buy drugs, use cryptocurrency.
There's already a US USDB, right, or whatever the fuck it is. I can't remember.
Sure, but now that we have this established, Prime, you are fully on board now with eliminating FDIC because we have the public deposit box. Let's get rid of FDIC.
No.
Whoa,
You asked me if I could
why
go to a
not?
halfway point.
You can put it in the FDIC.
No. You asked me to go a halfway point, right? And then
that was the compromise.
No. First of all, you went okay. So the compromise
when you go full fascism to get a small
yeah like
in the economics like Jesus
and I agree with Scott here because like, once you make things all I know it hurts, right, but like once you make things like all digital, then you lose a whole like an incredible amount of control, and you cut people out of the economy in itself, right? You put another barrier to people to access like the money economy. So there's that. Also, I just wanted to say, I'm like, so I had to like refresh myself on public banking, right? Like, because I talked about this for like many years ago, right? And I've been really interested. So I like looked on this website. I'm not going to tell you which one, but this is website, and it shows a meeting. It shows a meeting of people like discussing this stuff, and I think I'm in the picture. I think I'm in the picture. This is from I think I'm in the
from
picture.
your MySpace.
Yeah, it's from my MySpace. Yeah,
this is a recent panel.
And like because it's like someone's giving a seminar, and I think I'm in the picture because remember there's like a really cute girl there, and I think I see her in the picture as well. Anyway, whatever.
Now I understand why you're behind a public
wait.
system.
As long as
the girl there, and he didn't pay attention to anything that was going on. He was just like, you got a honeypot into supporting CBDCs, man.
No, when Doobie wants cute girls, it's a problem, but when Prime wants it, it's okay.
No, I didn't say I want cute girls. I just said one existed.
You said, this panel wouldn't have been the same if this girl.
One existed within my general area. And
what you said was, if that girl wasn't cute, the panel wouldn't have been the same. That's what you said. That's exactly. We all heard it.
And then Prime would have fired her for not being cute.
Since the cute girl is left and the panel just isn't the same, according to Prime Kai's, of course.
No, wait a minute. No,
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get out of here as well, brother.
Hey. Okay, well, I'll let you go. But Scott, thanks for coming through. Been having a really good discussion. I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm not sure if you agree. But I had a lot of fun talking with you about this. And I think this is just like it's a difference of popping a few things, but I think a different ideology like banking should be for. And like that creates a divide that's difficult for us to. Because I think if we were on the same page there, then I think the rest of the stuff would be pretty easy to solve.
Really, I just don't want the poor and the middle class to suffer as a corrupt banking system constantly awards and rewards via inflation and bailouts and all of these things, and the FDIC, and allowing these people to make riskier investments instead of actually insuring themselves and actually and fraud. And honestly, if you don't want that, I swear to God, you'd be on my side if you just understood how this banking system works.
Okay. Hold on. Let me. Okay. So if and maybe you've already said this, and maybe I didn't catch it, and so you can make fun of me. It's fine.
No,
but
it's fine.
If the banks, right, did get the private insurance, right, they were privately insured for their deposits, and you cut the government out of it, right? In the situation where a bank failed, and they were again had this private insurance that had to cover all depositors, would you be okay with that? Like 100% of all depositors? At least
that's the plan. Like if a bank fails, right? The plan is literally every fucking asset that they own must go to the depositors.
I agree. Hold on, but the difference here, and the difference we were having previously, this I thought, was that you were saying that ordinary retail depositors would have to take a loss, right? If the scheme you are pushing, right, in terms of a public, a private insurance, completely covers 100% covers retail depositors. Like I think we can at the very least, like agree on that.
In the transition to my wonderful anarcho-capitalist utopia, if we want a law that says that these people have to maintain insurance so that even when they go down, they will cover up to $250,000, maybe, right? Yeah, I don't like that's a great transition to getting away from the state doing it, because the problem is where does that money actually come from? When you look at where that money's actually coming from, what you recognize is it's not necessarily coming from taxes. And so when people think that something's not coming from taxes, they make it seem like the poor and the middle class aren't the one being harmed. But what's actually happening is that the money's coming from the banks, right? Mm-hmm. And then and it's also coming from the Federal Reserve that's pumping money in to stop this. Except the Federal Reserve is also controlling our money. And so when they print money, that causes inflation. And what that is that's a tax on everybody. The only people it's not a tax on, right, is loans, and it doesn't affect people that have assets. So if you have a lot of student loans, that part of that isn't affected, to be fair, and a lot of people do have student loans, right? So inflation can be good, I guess, for student loans, but the people that it overwhelmingly helps, right, when you have inflation, is millionaires, billionaires that own land, that own assets, and all the money that they have comes from other banking loans. It's you and me and like the single moms and all those people that when a bank or when these things happen and they get paid out, those are the people that pay at the grocery store, at the pump, in their rent. That's what happens when we have this inflation. So yeah, I don't fucking want that. Instead, I don't want it either. Billionaires to be responsible when they make shitty investments to pay for the customers that they said they had.
Billionaires. I like how he enunciates. Say that.
Yeah, but then I think we agree on lots of it. I think we just mechanics of like I think we agree on the basic concept of if you want to protect retail depositors, right? Then that's what I want to do too, and I don't want to protect the rich bankers who made those bad investments. I agree with you. I said that from the beginning when I was talking back to it, right? Like fuck those guys. I'd put a lot of them in jail for what they did, especially. So maybe we disagree on the mechanism, but if we agree on that part, which is why I asked about like retail depositors in the first place, well then I think we can make some bridges. So thank you, Scott.
Bridges built. I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere. Check me out on Rumble, YouTube, Twitter, etc. I love you guys.
Bye, friend.
Scott could be so good, man, but he doesn't want to be.
If he wasn't a villain, he'd be so.
Thank you for watching. If you made it all the way through this video, then you've got to like, share, and subscribe. Over 70% of you watching aren't subscribed, and it really helps. We're live on Twitch every Monday through Thursday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. And follow us on Twitter for more spicy libertarian takes. Finally, we all know that YouTube is a temporary place for dissidents. One day we'll upset the wrong journalists and be gone. Poof. But it doesn't have to be that way if you make sure to follow us on Rumble. Every video on YouTube is also posted to Rumble, and sometimes we exclusively stream there. Thank you for your time. All links are in the description below.